Okay, so now we're going to look at foreign policy, units 1 through 3. And I think with this one, we can kind of look at the very early period, this developing colonial period, and then towards the end, obviously, the Revolutionary War and the new nation trying to kind of figure out its foreign policy. And then the incredibly impactful statement by George Washington at the end of the period. So let's look early on. Europeans realized the benefit to controlling a colonial empire, obviously with the Spanish making lots of money from silver and then having this huge territorial empire, or the Portuguese with their control of Brazil and then their trading empire. But by the time we get into, maybe about the 17th century, most major powers have staked a claim. So you should have some sense of how the Spanish system is a territorial empire, how the Dutch colonial system is more of a trading empire, how in many ways the French system has got a very limited colonial presence, but still important for them in New France, and how the British system is slow to start, but also kind of in some ways, especially towards the end of the 17th century and into the 18th century, takes over being the dominant colonial power from the Spanish. How are those systems different is important to understand in this early period, especially as the British kind of has a very hands-off attitude towards their colonies, especially in North America, whereas other nations are much more hands-on. And so because of that, the British colonies develop in different ways. Right? Different colonies are different, and they develop without a whole lot of British political control. If we're going forward, we see a number of things in the 18th century that involve conflicts with Amerindians, whether it be the Chickasaw Wars, the French and Indian War, the Beaver Wars that continued on. There's always this issue of dealing with Amerindians. And I think during the colonial period, we certainly see strong power blocks of Amerindians that are nations in their own right. The Iroquois, the Chickasaw, the Seminole, the Cherokee, and others. And so the colonies and the British government in the 18th century, late 17th, early 18th, are having to deal with those Amerindian powers, and just like they would any other foreign country. And so you should be aware of some of those late 17th century, early 18th century conflicts with them. Obviously, as we start to move forward, the end of the French and Indian War is hugely impactful. The French and Indian War and then its end are hugely impactful to the shaping of foreign policy. That sets America on the road to independence and the Revolutionary War, and the restrictions that follow the Treaty of Paris 1783. Remember, Paris is beautiful, and there are many treaties of Paris. So the 1783 one ends the French and Indian War, and because of all that debt that the British want the colonies to help pay, and we've talked about whether that, that's not that unreasonable a request, but historically sometimes it's seen as the British are being so oppressive. I'm not sure how oppressive that really is. But nonetheless, they want them to pay that debt, and that pushes America into the Revolutionary War, which would be one of the central ideas of foreign policy in the period, fighting for independence. Obviously, the French importantly join the United States as an ally, so the French alliance would be really important during that period. And then the war comes to a successful conclusion for Americans who want independence, and the Treaty of Paris of 1783 ends that war. Foreign policy in the new nation is shaped around either Amerindian issues, like things like the Battle of Fallen Timbers and trying to have an Amerindian policy that America can enforce, and other issues that are kind of European in notion, like the French Revolution and the real importance of the French Revolution on American foreign policy, whether it be directly with France or as it's shaping with the Haitian Revolution. Towards the end of the period, George Washington says, listen, when it comes to foreign policy, we're not a strong nation. You can see that we have a lot of issues. We need to protect ourselves. It's great to trade with people, but we shouldn't have long-standing entangling alliances. And that isolationist idea really is important. So that's a quick look at foreign policy ideas in units 1 through 3.